Martha Gardner could be giving tips here.
Mate, there are so many home handy tips around here today. It's amazing. If you can give me one to keep me dry, I'll be delighted.
Car 15, also in pit lane. Heading out, enormous number of driver and car changes. Pace car still out on the circuit, heading down Conrod Straight. Tony Longhurst getting out of pit lane in time.
A lot clearer down here. Conditions very different at the bottom of the mountain. You just get some idea of how steep that rise is. You can have different weather on one part of the circuit, completely different weather on one part of the circuit. Visibility negligible up the top. In fact, the cameras give an impression of more visibility than there actually is.
Yeah, for sure.
They brighten up the images more than somewhat.
Well, there's a classic example of what you're looking at.
What you're not looking at.
At high speed. I'll just look at that accident between the 7 Caltex car and the Marathon Foods Commodore, being a dark colour and running at about 200 k's in the spray. I guess you just wouldn't see them there.
Well, you heard Seaton say he was looking out the window to see where the white lines were at 200 plus kilometres an hour.
I've done that, but not at 200.
Motor racing in Braille. Not a nice game to play at that sort of speed. Mark Scaife, cool, calm and collected. And there is Rudy Eggenberger. It is just one part of his enormous technical equipment.
That's his Lynx, isn't it, or his Game Boy. He's given up and he's just amusing himself while the pace cars are.
Gary Brabham getting a lesson in the electronics that make these cars tick over.
Trying to fire it back
over at all at the moment.
No spark.
Sierra's once again with their engine management system. They can tune it to suit certain conditions. I guess that's what Rudy'd be doing now. Trying to get the car as drivable as possible. There's virtually no grip. Punching in all sorts of programs into the engine management system.
Oh, how motor racing has changed. When the guru climbs in with the keyboard and tries to retune the car. Richie?
I think Rudy's down here with the computer. They're still not absolutely sure what the problem is. Gary Brabham sitting very patiently in the car. He had to run round for about 5 or 6 laps with this awful misfire earlier on because they were expecting Klaus Niedzwitz to come in. And Niedzwitz, of course, was running well and truly in the top 10 at the time. And Rudy just climbing out of the car now. Computer's still plugged in, though. Not sure it's meant to carry passengers like Rudy, so I don't think he'll be going much further with it. But still no clue as to exactly what the problem is.
Do they at least suspect it's connected to the amount of water coming into the car, Richard?
I think that'd be a fairly safe assumption, yes.
I've just heard from Terry Bosanjak, and as we speculated, the weather was the cause of that incident. Bosanjak says that he didn't see the John English car at all. It was black, it was to the left, the passenger side of the screen, and he gave him the old Liberace treatment without any intention or any vision whatsoever.
Had to be the logical explanation, didn't it, for that? John Brady in the pits now with John Bowe.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gary. One bloke very happy to be out of the rain, John Bowe. How was it out there?
It's a hell of a way to make a living, isn't it, really? It's atrocious, honestly. In all my years of motor racing, it's the worst conditions I've ever seen.
Even as a Tasmanian?
Even as a Tasmanian. We don't get rain that heavy down there.
The demisting problem, everyone's having trouble seeing out of the cars. Obviously, the altitude up and down the mountains just making it a nightmare, as well as the heat.
Well, you know, we didn't see the... I guess we didn't see the rain coming before the race, and the inside of the screen missed it up really badly, and you just couldn't see. I got my hanky out of my pocket at one stage and gave it a wipe, but it's not the answer. Now we've demisted it and put the other window down. It might be a little better anyway, but you drive into a wall of spray, and that's why there's all these accidents. You know, you just can't see.
It's easy to joke about it. It must be downright frightening out there at times.
Well, it is, honestly. I'm no hero, and you know, I had my heart in my mouth a few times, I can tell you.
What about when you got a shunt up the back? That must have really given you a heart attack.
Well, there was a wall of spray again, and as I got there, it was Gibbsy, and I jinked left and missed him, thank God. And as I did, someone hit me up the backside, so I don't even know who it was.
Now there's the Gardner car, the Gardner Moore car stopped at the entrance to the pit straight.
Hand up, appealing for help. Here they come. Hurry, scurry to push the car back, and they've got a long push.
Meanwhile, Alan Moffat Sierra will come into shot as they push him past the Moffat pit in a moment. They've changed spark plugs, spark leads. They're changing everything in that car.
And now it won't go.
And the 15 car, Holden Racing Team entry, Thomas Mazura, Brad Jones, is back in again. It was in for a pit stop only
2 laps ago.
2 laps ago. I don't know what the problem is there. I suspect Thomas Mazura is back in the car.
Demisting again. It's no vis. And we've seen what can happen when you've got a foggy windscreen. Wipers failed. We lost a fuse in that car before, didn't we? And the wipers failed. And we've got the same problem once again.
All the things to go wrong.
Pace car goes through our shot there, pursued by car 72, I think it was.
These conditions are becoming absolutely appalling.
Look at that rain now. That's sheeting down. That's torrential rain.
It's a torrent, yeah.
Yes, the car behind the pace car's not the car leading the race. That's car 72, Corolla entry driven by Greg Easton, Brad Stratton and David Sala.
Even our lap scorers are having to move their position. The rain is coming in. Very strong wind blowing it directly into the commentary box. There's our track cam on the way out of
Look at that.
Repco corner, and that gives you some idea. You might as well stick a camera in the middle of a river. Look at the water there.
What a time for your wipers to fail. We've just heard that the Thomas Pizzera, Brad Jones, Holden Racing Commodore, there's our people. Yes, they're suffering.
Hey,
they've now got more problems. The wiper motor has now come loose on the firewall of the car, so it's a litany of woes.
Wipers are working overtime, as are our Channel 7 crew, Nigel Greenway and his team of lap scorers. Heavens above.
On the Caltex race score, let's check out the top 5 at this stage of the race with the pace car out yet again. It's Richards and Scaife in the number 1 Winfield Nissan GTR that hold pride of place ahead of teammates Olafson Crompton in the second vehicle. Longhurst and Chicotto in the 25 entry from Benson and Hedges BMW in third spot, followed by Nick Johnson, John Bower, 17 Shell Sierra, and 5th place in a great race at this stage held by Win Percy and Alan Grice in car 16 for Holden Racing.
Panorama, and of course Larry Perkins needed some help after his engine started to misfire. He needed some manual push there to push his car in. At the same time, Wayne Park was in to straighten out after a bingle in the second Peter Jackson Ford Falcon. And Kevin Waldock, look at this for some great driving. He brought the Playscape Sierra across that rain-soaked sand. He wouldn't have been able to do that in the dry, but there's just enough traction there. And Peter Brock has been up here looking at that replay and says that's some of the best driving he's seen in a long time. Terry Shield lucky to stay in the race after a slide in the 18 Shell Sierra down there in front of one of the commentary positions, and that is a nice little bit of escape there. Peter Brock, his woes continued, of course, colliding with Alan Grice up at the top of the mountain. We'll hear some more about that shortly. And the casualties continued with the number 29 Commodore shunting the Caltex Sierra, and spectacular stuff there down the straight as they slide through the miserable conditions that have really affected the race. This brought out the pace car winding its way through a fog-enshrouded Mount Panorama, and we are likely to see more of this to come because it is absolutely undrivable out there at the moment. We've seen it all in those first 3 hours here at the Great Race.
Thank you, Cameron.
Stormy weather.
Updating hour 3, and it really has become quite a slow procession.
We're on lap 64. Pace car out for the 3rd time in the race.
Yeah.
And the conditions, as we've heard drivers say, Johnny Bower in particular, he's no hero, but he was frightened out there a couple of times.
Last time car 30 went past, the Falcon went past, Seaton was begging with the officials to stop the race. They want a red flag this race.
There's been some suggestion that it may be called out, but the weather, in fact, is a little better than it was 5 minutes ago. So.
Yes, terrific.
Well, it's not been a terrific day for a lot of people here at Mount Panorama. As we saw, you can see there, the crowd has thinned out. People are ducking for cover to try and to keep dry, because it's not only wet out there, it has got very, very cold. And as we saw in that last update, Peter Brock is one of the people disconsolate with the way that events have gone here today, and he's in our pit studio at the moment. And we'll be going there shortly to talk to him with Bruce McAvaney. But for the moment, we'll just look at the cause of
all these problems.
These problems.
These are by the pace cars.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Well, it's just the Shell car, the Caltex car, rather, just did not see the big Commodore in front in these atrocious conditions of visibility. How lucky were they to escape from that?
Boz and Jack hitting English, and they're both okay. It's great.
I think when you get a situation like that where a guy on a straight piece of road can run up the back of another car claiming he never saw it, those sort of conditions are borderline as far as safety is concerned, and I guess a lot of the race officials must be wondering, certainly by the gesticulating by the drivers as they come past race control.
Yes, it's a clenched fist, really, isn't it? Held aloft.
Whether they're going to stop this. So the 2 is 1,000 hangs in the balance as the weather moves in.
The Mungos on the mountain must be pretty uncomfortable in this weather. It'll be a mud heap up there.
Not a pleasant place to be when it's raining.
The scoreboard says Jim Richards and Nissan lead the race from Anders Olofsson and Nissan. Tony Longhurst, BMW, they're the top three, and John Brady with Tim Schenken.
Yes, thanks very much, Gary. The view from up here in race control is it's a little drier, but I tell you, it must be pretty worrying out there, Tim.
Well, it is worrying, but we've just had a weather report from Orange where the weather is coming from. The advice is that this weather passed through half an hour ago and it is lifting. As you can see, actually, when you look out now, it's much lighter. We were going to keep the pace car out until the circuit's what we would call raceable. It'll still be very wet, but of course we've got a lot of streams running across the road. And once that is cleared up, we'll restart the race.
The fog as well must have been a worry, made you pull the pace car out in the first place.
Yes, it's very important that the flag points can see from one to the other. And in those conditions, when that visibility isn't there, then we put the pace car out.
I suppose, how bad does it have to get before you think about calling it off?
Well, the pace car can go as slowly as you like, and I don't want to stop the race, and I don't want to call the race off. So we will just live with the pace car and worry about the weather while that car's out. Once the weather starts to lift, we'll be out.
Nothing else that makes for an interesting day's racing.
It makes for a long day's racing.
Tim, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Tim Schenken, the clerk of the course, race director, former Australian racing great and an international driver of note. Well, you don't really get any idea just how heavy the rain was there for that brief period, but Tim's right. The mist and overcast has lifted quite dramatically in the last few minutes, and the guys in the pits are taking this opportunity to relax while the pace car's out, because things certainly do get hectic when they come in for all these tyre changes and refueling stops under these conditions. The punter's on the hill, wet and bedraggled, and probably not enjoying things too much at the present time. The pace car continues to circulate. Peter Brock does not. He is with Bruce McAvaney.
He certainly is, Gary Wilkinson. Peter, a good move, do you think, by Tim Schenken to leave the pace car out now for as long as possible?
Yeah, he's had a few rain-affected races lately.
Formula One with Alain Prost a couple of years ago.
Here he is now. But it is a great idea in that respect, because no one wants to see no race. And there is a chance that you get out there and perhaps have 2 or 3 hours of very hard racing as the track sort of does clear out a bit. The biggest problem, and I think Johnny Bowe and Tony Longhurst and all these cars, you've seen them all talk about it, is you simply cannot see. And it's amazing to go down the straight at probably 240, 250k, because the car's not much slower on the wet. And you're looking at a wall of water and you're thinking, well, is there a car in there or is it not? And you're hoping they're going to put their brake lights on or something just to give you a bit of a hint.
So you've been coming here since '69. Is this the worst you've ever copped it?
Yeah, it is.
Anywhere in the world?
I'd say anywhere in the world. You couldn't drive in more difficult situation because you can't see. Now, if you're in a car that's got a ventilation system and it's working out okay, and the track is such that it's draining okay, you can get by. And I guess if we're out there doing Tui's Top Gun right now, it would be quite reasonable. We wouldn't be complaining too much. But amongst other cars, there's only one fast line through a corner. And that car, if the car's on the line, someone else is trying to pass, they've usually got to get off that swept area of the road, and they can hit you, you know.
And what about your situation with Alan Grice? You did an interview straight afterwards and you were fairly hot, and we saw you dash down to the Holden team and talk to their team manager. You were pretty upset with Grice.
Well, I did. I thought it was... I thought it was silly, to be honest with you. I'd caught up I'd caught and passed their car earlier on. I'd caught up behind this little train here, and none of us could get by because of vision. And Gracie gave me a little tap there. Now, that was okay, because Gracie gives people a little tap occasionally, and you just accept that's the way it is. What added insult to injury is right at that point.